My name is Rosemary LaForge, and I'm interviewing my father about the Depression. Dad, how old were you when the Great Depression started?
I was about 6 years old.
Did you or your family lose any money when the stock market crashed?
No, but I was a little boy out in the backyard in Detroit, and my father got a morning Detroit Times. And I remember the headlines then in the Detroit newspaper.
What were the headlines?
The stock market had crashed.
What do you feel caused the Depression?
I really believe there was it was a big pie, and one of the biggest pieces of pie that caused the Depression was when Hoover raised the import tariffs, and Great Britain and the rest of the world boycotted all our exports because we raised our import tariffs. And I think that the bankers were not regulated enough. Wall Street wasn't regulated enough.
You mean there was too much free spending then?
No, they're on the part of the bankers. Yes, they could take our money and do whatever they wanted with it.
Can they do that today? Or?
No, they can't. They've got to put a certain amount in government bonds, a certain amount in reserves at all times. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, was not in existence then, and I think there was a lot of manipulation on Wall Street.
Who manipulated who? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think the few of the sharpies, like, Joe Kennedy, he sold out before the stock market crashed, but Bernie Baruch was pretty sharp, and he sold short. I don't know if you kids understand what a short sale in the stock market.
What? Please explain that, would you?
A short sale is when you think the market's going to go down, you sell out short. It's a hard thing to explain to a youngster. You're selling out stock that you don't own. In other words, you're buying stock for 100, and you think it's going to go down to 50. You can make 50 bucks.
Oh, I see.
When Baruch made $1 million, well over $1 million, he had to pay no income tax on that money. And he wasn't the only one.
He made it off of the Depression?
He made it off the crash.
What were Hoover houses?
I don't exactly remember what Hoover houses were, but I have an
Shanty
idea
towns?
they were shanty towns, yes, and you better believe I've seen a shanty town. I saw it in the back of Hudson's department store in the alleys in downtown Detroit, where men were sleeping in cardboard boxes overnight.
And that was what a shanty town was?
That was my opinion of a shanty town.
Why do you think they nicknamed them Hoover houses?
Because Hoover had a very unsavory reputation during the Depression, because he never tried, never did a thing to alleviate the suffering of the American people.
How did the public feel about Hoover?
They hated his guts.
All of them?
They hated his guts.
Why?
Because they blamed it all on him at that particular time. But since then, I think the American people could see that it was not entirely Hoover's fault.
Right. Is it true that Americans sought jobs in Russia?
That is very true. My own father sought some in Alaska when Roosevelt came along.
How did other people look upon this? Did they feel it was like deserting America? Or
people were so desperate for work, they'd go any place. The hobos would get on the railroad car if they heard that if they were in California and they heard that there was work in Missouri or South Carolina, they'd get on a boxcar and ride cross country to where there was work. And these men were not lazy men. They're not bums.
They were just out of a job.
Just desperate for work.
Right. Do you think the crime rate was any higher during
the Depression? Yes, it was higher. Anytime you have a recession or a depression, your crime rate always goes up.
Do you think it was as high then as it is today? I mean, in comparison?
No, I don't think so. It is today, no.
Okay. Did you or those you lived with find employment during the Depression?
My father did.
What did he do?
My father was not a lazy man. He was a hard worker. He worked in a restaurant, but he was a bricklayer by trade.
Did you try to find a job during the Depression?
I did find a job during the Depression, yes.
What did you do?
I sold newspapers during the summer on a street corner for $1 a week. 10 and 12 hours a day.
Wow. 10 and what did you do for 10 and 12 hours a day?
Sold newspapers on a street corner.
During the summer then?
During the summer, right.
Were there very many kids like out of school? Did you go to school during the Depression?
I went to school during the Depression. I went to a Catholic school, and my father used to pay the tuition, maybe 10 and 15 and 20 cents a week.
For tuition?
For tuition, just to see if he could get it to $10 paid before the end of the year. We went over to St. Michael's, and he told Father O'Reilly, Father, he says, I don't know whether or not I can send these kids over to school here. I want to. Father said, don't worry about it, Leo, send them over.
Many officials held that wages were not cut substantially during the Depression. This was supposedly to ensure purchasing power, which would be beneficial to the economy. Do you think these statements are true? Or?
Those are false statements. They didn't cut your wages, they just fired you.
They didn't cut your wages. That's what they said. It was really beneficial to the economy not to cut wages. So if you had a job, you would make good wages. Is that true?
You're right, but
no one had a job.
I've seen men go to work. I know of men that have gone to work. The guy and the boss would say, look, you can come to work if you want. If at the end of the week there's any money in the till, in the cash register, I'll pay you. If there isn't, I can't pay you.
Oh, I see.
And the men went to work. They didn't know whether or not they were going to get paid at the end of the week or not.
Oh, I see. But just the work that they would work. What were your impressions of FDR as president?
I think the
Good
guy
or bad?
tried.
Mm-hmm.
I think just on the strength of his personality, he gave the American public a tremendous uplift.
What about government agencies? Did he create very many? Or?
He did. The Social Security Agency, the Securities and Exchange Commission, NRA.
Do many of them exist today?
Yes, they do.
Do you think it caused any major change in the government, his election?
Yes, it did. It regulated the bankers and some of the stock market manipulators.
Did you know that FDR was paralyzed when?
Yes. Yes.
Some people believe it.
It was not a well-kept secret. Everybody knew he was paralyzed from the waist down. But I give the news media a great deal of credit because we never saw a picture or a moving picture of FDR by the Secret Service or we saw him as he was sitting or standing or being held up, but never being carried. They never degraded him or humiliated him in public. I give the news media a great deal of credit in that respect.
When do you feel the Depression came to an end?
All around 1939.
Why do you think it?
Well, I'm sorry to say, I think one of the reasons, and I hate to say this, but I think when they started, the other international trade started up again, and we started furnishing the rest of the world steel for their armament factory, for their armaments.
You mean for the war?
That's right, and I hate to say it.
But it's true, though. It's a known fact that economy always picks up during wartime. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that we will enter another economic depression soon?
I don't know. I hear that question. Younger men ask me that question all the time. Do you think this will happen again? Do you think it'll ever happen again? If I was to say yes, I would be predicting the future, and only God could do that.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
There's one other thing I'd like to say. I hope to God we don't have another one.
Oh.
I can laugh now, yes. I can laugh now about it, but it was tough. It was
really
tough.
Seriously, yeah.
It was tough.